added
There's an
the
inconsistency.
So,
There is
the first round of bricks would
might get in the way.
the
Or as
the whole
Jenny and I, there is
presentation
no
in
issue.
some
Second
in
round of
English,
bricks in
and
the way.
who knows?
Yeah. Compromise their case.
Have someone come in here.
But-
What you need to do is to have
We're
an
gonna have you come right
You
down.
walked
Yeah.
in the SU office and I
That's
said,
the right
uh-oh.
page.
That's just because you came in with such conviction. I thought there was something wrong.
Listen, like I said, it's no joke that
Oh, I know, I
that's kind
just
of my
get the
nickname.
same
Probably
thing.
will
I
get
got the
fired
same thing. I'm thinking like,
before the
man.
year's out, and I'd like to wait, let her wait for a while before that happens.
So, was other words I wouldn't, but I think, oh.
And Brad.
I mean,
came,
oh, you, I mean, oh,
Okay,
there
we're
must be
gonna
something.
sip-
Because
looks like we got a
you
vote.
came
Brad
in
came
looking like you were a
if there
vertical
was
bear,
issue,
so.
if you asked him a question.
Yeah, I remember getting that all the time, like, oh, okay, enough.
We got
Yeah.
1, 2,
Good, we got a
3,
quorum.
The
4,
person
5,
that
6, 7. We
wrote
got a
that
quorum.
letter
Yeah, we
with
do.
the opinion had to have gotten that information
Mr.
from
Fine?
some lawyer.
Yeah, well, it's part of
Most
the
of it
gavel.
came out of Mello's.
I don't need one, but I didn't want to be rude.
stuff. That's what it was. It's cut paste.
Ready? I'd like to call the Bellows Falls Union High School School Board meeting open. It is 6:30, June 10th. Any adjustments to the agenda?
I would like to add under new business discussion action item, resignation of board clerk with possible executive session. Yes, executive session.
Okay. Anything else?
That's all I have.
Review and
Oh,
approve
excuse me, I'm
board
sorry,
and...
point of order.
Yep, I'm sorry.
Are we going to have to go into the bubble and then come back out to do an appointment, or can we move 10 to 9? Can we swap the numbers?
We'll take the new business resignation down to executive session. We won't come back
Okay,
out.
got it.
We'll do
Thank you.
Yes. Review and approve board and building and grounds minutes of May 13th.
I'll make a motion that we approve the buildings and grounds minutes of May 13th.
Oops. Sorry, I have to turn the sound off.
Motion has been
Stop.
made to approve
Sorry.
building and grounds minutes. Is there a second? Is there any discussion?
There were a couple of typos I noticed
Yes, ma'am.
on page 3. Apparently David Clark was brining in students, so instead of bringing, and on page 4, Alex Beck, it says form New Hampshire instead of from. That's all. That's all I know. Minimal, they're just typos.
Deb, were you
That
talking
was it.
buildings and grounds minutes or
No,
regular minutes?
Were we talking about the regular minutes
No,
first?
the
Building and
motion
grounds.
was
Did I
for
screw up?
buildings
Oh,
and
my
grounds.
mistake. Rewind, okay. No, not about those, my apologies.
All those in favor of approving building and grounds committee meetings notes, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Now let's go to the regular school board meeting on May 13th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from May 13th
With the corrections that
With-
Deb has
with
brought
the
forward.
corrections as proposed by Deb.
Anyone else have any adjustments? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Communication and public comments. Doesn't look like we have any. Policies, Chris?
No, we've kind of taken the back burner, but we're currently working on them, and just a reminder of the ones we're working on: conflict of interest, board agendas, public participation, firearms, weapons, and wellness policy. Those are the ones that we're currently looking at.
Thank you. We would like to now welcome the Foreign Language Department to do a presentation.
good evening. We are the foreign language department. And you've had many of these departmental presentations. I think we might be the last.
Science gets to go also at some point, but
Oh.
that will be next year, I guess.
We're the last for the year.
Yeah.
So I'm Lee Hart,
Julie Torres.
and we are your foreign language department. So a little bit about who we are.
I have a bachelor's in Spanish from Keene State and a master's of education from Keene State as well. This is my 19th year, the end of my 19th year here at BFUHS, and I'm also BFUHS alumni, 1994, best class ever. Sorry, Chris. And
Is there an opportunity for a rebuttal toward the end?
and I'm sorry for my appearance. I'm kind of covered in plaster from working with Durabon all afternoon, so apologize for that.
On the float.
On the float, yes, on my
Important.
float, in my class.
My name is Lily Hart. I have a bachelor's in classical languages and literatures from Smith College, and I'm in the middle of a master's degree from Middlebury College in German with a concentration in pedagogy. I'm actually the pilot student for this concentration in pedagogy, and it's really exciting. I've gotten to work with an Ivy League professor, Christina Fry, who has won national awards for her German teaching with cutting edge curriculum and assessment development. And that's been really great and really informed my practice in the classroom, primarily in German, but also in how I think about my Latin. And we do a lot of collaboration, I think, around those topics too. We'll get to that later on. And this is my, I counted actually like a minute ago, and I thought it was my 5th year, but maybe it's my 5th year of classroom experience. I say this a lot in class. I'm not a math teacher.
Students are required to complete at least one level of foreign language for graduation. Many colleges require applicants to complete 2 or 3 levels of the same foreign language. We always recommend kids take at least the 2 levels, but a lot of them, especially if they're going to try to go to a more rigorous college, they want the 3 years. So they want to get the 3 years, but we don't, well, we'll get to that as well, but we don't always have the ability to offer 3 years for them because of the block scheduling.
So these are the courses we offer. I put courses that we have like on the books, but we aren't offering currently or haven't offered it during this school year in parentheses. So those are kind of the things, as Julie was mentioning, that because of scheduling or interest or enrollment, we aren't offering, or we haven't offered them in the current school year. You want to talk about it?
Well, we just don't have enough enrollment, and so we haven't been able to offer Spanish we did last year, but we're doing it on a every other year basis, just because we can't have a class of 2 or a class of 1. Well, I guess we could, but it's much more functional language class when you have more students so that they can communicate, obviously being a communicative class. And with our curriculum, it's all based on communicating. So therefore, it's much more effective if we can have classes with sizes that are, 12 would be optimum, I think. Wouldn't you say?
I think between 9 and 16 is ideal. I think 12 is good because it divides into a lot of different
great numbers.
Yeah. And a similar thing is true for Latin 3 and German 3. There's a lot of, well, I'm going to say there's strong interest from a few students, but like Julie said, there's a critical mass of students that are really needed to not only in terms of resources be able to teach those courses, but really to be able to teach those courses as effectively as possible. And so that is kind of why those are in parentheses. Mythology and folklore is a class that my predecessor, I think, teaching Latin, taught a version of that was really successful. I just wrote a curriculum for it really recently, so it hasn't really kind of gotten its feet under it in terms of kids, I think, hearing about it and being interested in it. I am excited to teach it, but not next year, maybe in the future. So our PBGRs are based on the ACTFL standards.
Excuse
so
me, Lily, could you unwind ACTFL?
Oh yes, it's actually put in parentheses here, the American
Okay.
Council of Teachers of Foreign Languages, and that's really our overarching professional organization that incorporates foreign language teachers who teach any foreign languages, including English as a second language. So it's really a very wide and rich professional network nationwide. And it also incorporates, ACTFL also incorporates, it's primarily, I think, for K-12 teachers, but there certainly are higher ed professors that have parts in that conversation. And those people have, well, I mean, the whole organization have really worked really hard and done a great job, I think, developing these standards in terms of, like Julie was saying, our classes are really communication focused. So interpretive language skills is kind of obviously like how you interpret what is being spoken, or how, you know, through hearing or reading. Those would fall into those boxes. Presentational language skills is like what I'm doing right now, just imagine me doing it in German. And interpersonal language skills are, you know, day-to-day communication, whether it be conversation, whether it be a professional letter, or whether it even be, not for Latin, but texting. Those kind of all fall into the interpersonal box. And then the cultural stuff, I feel like, is kind of self-explanatory and interwoven into all of those.
Yeah, we try to incorporate that with all of our, what we're doing all the time.
And one thing that recently there has come in the latest VTFLA newsletter, which is the Vermont, what does it stand for? Vermont Teachers of Foreign Language. Oh, that sounds right, yes. The AOE has been looking for educators to come together and help develop statewide PBGRs, and so we've both volunteered and are excited about being on that team, especially having used these PBGRs
For a couple of years
for a couple of years, and we really we work together like amazingly well. We sometimes say that we're twins.
We are twins.
But I think we do a good job too of like bouncing ideas off each other, and so we're excited to have gone through that process for the past 3 years with the PBGRs and really kind of seen in the classroom what works, what doesn't work, how it plays out, and to be able to collaborate with our colleagues on the state level and really kind of make an impact on how these standards will be applied, not just here in our own classrooms, but throughout the state. Our strengths, which I broke up.
So we have a wide variety of courses offered by just the two of us, which is great. Excellent collaboration and syncing between all three languages. We, like Lily said, we work really well together. She's done a lot of the talking, but probably because she knows I hate public speaking.
How would I know that?
I don't know, because we're twins. And I announce it all the time anyhow, just because I don't like to public speak, so I just feel better when I just blurt it out. But anyhow, we do work really well together, and we try to make it so that no matter what language you're taking, it's a uniform learning experience, so to speak. We teach using comprehensible input. I don't know if that's next or not, but we teach using comprehensible input, which means what the kids are learning is something that they can understand, and it's comprehensible. I mean, it's kind of in the name, but it's comprehensible. So you're not just rattling off really fast, as much as they love to hear that now and then, and it's entertaining for them. What you really need to do is speak slow and use a lot of repetition in whatever language you're teaching, and that's what helps them to start to hear it over and over and over and over again, and then they will say those things. They'll feel comfortable at some point to say those things themselves. Sometimes it takes a while, and it doesn't necessarily happen after a level 1, but as you progress through the levels, the hope is that they will get or gain more confidence and start producing language themselves with the output factor.
Yeah, and comprehensible input came from an idea that was researched and developed in the 80s and 90s that was called the natural approach. And so that thing that Julie was just talking about output following comprehension of input, sometimes by a large amount of a seemingly large amount of time, actually really follows, if you think of it, how people naturally learn their native language. Like little kids, babies understand what you're saying to them long before they are able to produce any of it. And so we're kind of philosophy of language being different from other subject matters in that, multiplication isn't an innate ability of every human being, but language production is. Like science isn't knowing the scientific method isn't an innate ability of every human being, but language production and understanding is. I lost the end of that sentence. Anyway, that's kind of the idea there, and of the input being comprehensible and leveling up. It's called I+1, so it's like leveling up like really by really small increments, so that the students almost don't realize how much more they can do day to day. And I had students as we were studying for our final today being like, "Miss Hart, we don't need to study, your class is so easy." And I'm like, yes, that means I'm doing it right. If you can speak so much more than you could, this was a level 1 class, like how much they can express in German, and the whole time they thought it made sense, it was easy. That is how the philosophy is supposed to work. That's what I was saying, cutting edge practices, including, what's next? Comprehensible input, that was that button. TPRS, teaching proficiency through reading and storytelling, kind of does fall underneath the comprehensible input umbrella. And it's just a way to have, like Julie was saying about having repetition of the same structure or the same vocabulary over and over, because you can hear something, especially, in all 3 of our languages, there'll be a lot of cognates, so something you'll hear and you'll be like, oh, I pretty much understand what that means, because it kind of sounds like English. But if you only hear it that one time, it doesn't really stick. And so teaching proficiency through reading and storytelling is a way, the idea is to make stories that are interesting, even that are compelling for students to listen to and want to talk about and kind of just be excited about what the characters are doing or whatever the situation is in the foreign language, so that they're getting those targeted structures repeated enough times, that they're hearing them or reading them repeated enough times that they're like, oh, of course that means that. That's kind of the sort of immersive quality of the pedagogy that is our aim. And so TPRS is a way to do that. We both have deskless classrooms. I remember when I first set it up, was it you walked in and you were like,
what is
happening? What are you doing?
This chick's crazy.
But it really is.
It's great.
I think it's great. Yeah, it makes, because the focus in comprehensible input, especially at the lower levels, is on listening and receiving that input. And if there's production, a lot of times it's spoken production, or even if it's written production, you're not writing a whole sheet of writing, you're doing a little bit of writing here and there. It really brings the focus, I think, to the center, to the language itself, and it's a lot easier also to see when people have cell phones on their laps. Yes.
So just questioning what you mean here. By deskless, you mean no table, no desk.
Right.
Just a chair.
Chairs.
Just chair.
Almost like in a horseshoe. Well, mine's in a horseshoe. I don't know. Mine is in 2 horseshoes because I have really large numbers.
Yeah. Usually I have mine in 2. My classroom, it doesn't work as well in the U. I usually do 2 rows. or sometimes 3 rows if I have like a larger a larger class.
We do get a little bit of resistance, not gonna lie. I mean, some of the kids, especially at first, are like, this is not happening, this does not work for me. And
Security
I know
blanket.
it is. It's a comfort. I mean, we're all used to a table in front of us, and there is a sense of security with
What can you
something
text
to set
under?
your. Yes, you can text under.
Where's my gum going? Oh,
Well,
that's the chair. All right.
And there's like a core strength thing too, where everyone's like, but I need something to lean
rest on. They want to sleep. You
Yeah.
know, not that they want to sleep in our class, but you know, if you're having a bad day, you want to put your head down.
Yeah.
So it really avoids that. If we need to write, we put a clipboard. We have clipboards. They can use clipboards or their binders, whatever they want. But
I guess that's where I was going was, particularly in Latin, it tends to be fairly reading and writing centric usually, at least my experience was.
Our
Maybe
class is
that's
a little
different.
different.
Doing it here,
I teach
okay.
spoken Latin.
So is it other way we were having a debate the other day.
Oh, I say awe, but I use the classical pronunciation, which is what I was taught. I mean, I didn't.
Church
hate-
Latin as opposed to.
But in the Church Latin you would pronounce the Church Latin is pronounced a lot more like Italian. So the ecclesiastical, then you would pronounce the V like the English V, but I use the classical pronunciation, so I pronounce my V's like W's. I think the classical pronunciation, first of all, I grew up with it, but I also think the classical pronunciation is easier because our alphabet was actually developed for the Latin language, and in the classical pronunciation there's really a one-to-one relationship.
Can I just
between
make-
sounds.
Didn't mean to drop you
You're
for
right,
that part of the
yeah,
weeds.
She
just
could go
gonna
on
say-
forever
I
on
can
this,
tell.
so
I'm really
sidebar
impressed.
questions for the next presentation.
I am happy to answer very many
She won't
linguistic
stop.
questions at a different time.
It's what she does.
Picking that up. Great.
Okay, so integrated performance assessments are something that I really just started with in German. That was what I was working on in my grad school work that I mentioned before, was developing these, I don't know how much more you want to hear about them, but developing these really cutting edge assessments, which are sort of like tests, but they're not, they have like a test feeling aspect, but they also have a presentational aspect, and they also have a conversational aspect, so you're really weaving all of those PBGRs, you're weaving all of those proficiencies that you're aiming at into a single culturally based assessment. And they take a lot of work to put together and to be kind of logically woven together and kind of logical to the students. But it's so cool to see the students like really be able to excel at presentation, at conversation about a topic, and about reading or listening about the same topic, and to have a good cultural footing. It's a really good, I think that's something that we will be moving towards in the next couple of years to try to like develop in all of the languages, to really have that, because that's kind of how the PBGRs, like, it makes the PBGRs super logical. And a lot of times, I don't know if other departments have said this, a lot of times the kids complain about the PBGRs, and so to be able to present them in the way that is, first of all, logical, or that second of all, we're always going for the, oh, of course that is how it is, why, how could you not do it that way? That just makes the most sense. I think that is really a role that IPAs accomplish well when they're well done. So we are both really involved in our professional communities. I love to speak publicly and present. So I am presenting this year at the ACTFL, which is the National Association annual conference. I'll be doing that in November. I also presented this year at the Vermont Foreign Language Association conference. That was in March or April, maybe. And I'm presenting at the end of this month, I'm super excited, at the American Classical League annual conference, which is their centennial. How cool is that? So Okay.
I just attend.
Right. Well, I mean, but I think it's rich I think it's
Yeah.
like a rich,
Still a great experience.
Absolutely, yeah, rich experience. And really like to stay fresh, get new ideas. A lot of the stuff that we are looking at, especially in technology, but also in like comprehensible input, is stuff that we've taken from conferences and really, figured out how to integrate into our students' experience. So like I said, it was a really good segue. The digital learning opportunities, we've also both presented about this at the district,
We love
at the
this
district-wide annual boot up, what is it called?
Boot Up
Tech
Boot Up Day.
Tech Boot Up Day.
Boot camp or whatever.
Yeah. So we use Quizlet. Quizlet is an online, basically like a crude way of saying it is an online flashcard site, although it's really powerful.
It's so much fun.
It does really a lot. Kahoots, where you are playing games, those are really engaging. There's a lot of different ways those can be used in the language classroom. Textivate is something that I think is unique to us.
Yeah, I
that
don't
we
think a lot of
use.
people use them.
I think it's great. I think that we should convince more elementary school literacy teachers to do it. But that when you input a text, a short text has to be less than 500 words, and it just creates a lot of games, again, for the students to like engage with the text in different ways. But it's really fun, and
You can make it your own. You can take out nouns, or you could take out adjectives. You can choose what you want to take out, or you can just have the computer generate what you want it to take. I mean, whatever they want to take out. They can play games against each other. They can play against the computer. It's pretty entertaining. Sometimes it's funny how the dynamics of a class work, because sometimes the kids either love it or they hate it, and it's, I guess, the same with any of the
it's same with any
of them. You really get to know the kids, and you know what they're gonna love or hate, or think, oh, well, okay, that's fine. But you just know your audience, I guess.
Yeah, so it's good to have like a big toolbox to kind of know what's going to work for the group. And I think that we are really effective at sharing our tools with each other to like be developing that for the benefit of all our students. Google Classroom we use, I don't think anyone has a strong opinion if they love or hate Google Classroom. That's just kind of a medium to get the assignments out and to collect digital assignments. All of the example assignments that we're about to show you were collected digitally through Google Classroom. Google Forms, I use a lot for my I use for like my end of semester surveys and data collection, kind of about my performance and stuff like that. But I also use them sometimes for other types of surveys or even quizzes, like short quizzes or something.
I use the Google Forms for March Madness when I do.
Oh,
I didn't do
yeah.
March Madness this year, but usually
That's
I
so
do
fun.
Musica de Marzo, which is like March Madness but with Spanish music, and we do it the month of March. This year I did not do it because I was going crazy planning a trip, but generally that's what I put together for March. And we do brackets in the hallway. It's fun.
One year I'm going to do it for German too, and then we can have the German song and the Spanish song compete
Oh my
at
gosh,
the end.
Spanish would definitely win.
Probably. But that I didn't get it together for March this year either. And the end more, we're gonna I have a short video that a student created video. You probably, I'm assuming, won't be able to understand it because it's in German, but it's just an example of the presentational aspect of
Can I pass these around?
sure, the presentational aspect of one of those IPAs, one of those integrated performance assessment that was about fairy tales in German. So this is a fairy tale that I think is not widely known in the United States, which is why I picked it. So the student in the interpretive part of the assessment read the fairy tale, answered some comprehension questions about the fairy tale. In the second part of the assessment, which you're going to see now, was the presentational part, where she made a short video clip kind of explaining the plot simply in German. And then the students were put into groups for the last part of the assessment and assessed on their conversations, comparing. Not everyone did the same fairy tale, so comparing the fairy tales that they had read and presented, and they had seen each other's presentations, so they had kind of that reference to compare them.
Boy.
You got out of that one.
All right, I was gonna ask a question.
It's not your video, not your star and roll.
Yeah, I was highlighted in a video because my daughter's in Spanish, and I was a little worried that.
Die Frau ist nicht glücklich. Der Mann sieht den Fisch. Der Fisch kann reden. Der Fisch ist ein Prinz. Der Mann und seine Frau wohnen in einem Schloss. Der Fisch gibt dem Mann und seiner Frau ein Schloss. Die Frau ist nicht glücklich. Die Frau will Gold. Der Fisch gibt die Frau Gold. Die Frau ist nicht glücklich. Der Fisch bringt den Mann und seine Frau zurück in den Hühnerstall.
That was too hard.
Nice and short. The problem is if you give kids too long of an assignment, they get really panicked. So this is a good, I want to do this for next year. I haven't jumped into this yet. I downloaded the app and I've created an account, but I haven't started playing with it yet, but I can't wait to.
It's really fun. It's
Because it
really
looks
not
great.
that hard to get the hang of either. Yeah.
But the books that are going around are each examples of books our students have done. The one that is by Molly in Spanish is mostly pictures that she took, so she didn't have to cite them, but the ones that were not her pictures that she got offline, she had to cite on the back, because Tina Smith would kill us if we did not have them cite. So we make sure we have them cite whatever is not their photo.
It's also
Illegal, yeah, that too. But Tina has,
Smith, a lot.
yeah, she has drilled that into her head. And Tina helped us last year, 2 years ago? No, last year. She helped us put these books
first semester last year we
together
started doing that.
and came in for a day because it seems like an easy enough thing, but the printing was tricky to make sure they were printing properly and this and that.
Now that we have the hang of it, I feel like
It's easy now.
It's easy now, but yeah, just to get it started. And the other one, the German one, by Alec, when he submitted it to me, I was like, I can't print this. It doesn't have any citations for the pictures. And he was like, I drew all those pictures, Miss Hart. Then like another email later, I own them. So I was super impressed with his, and I was like, I'm going to show this to everyone. This is like the best one I've ever gotten. So I've been really impressed by his art there. Yeah. So in addition to our courses, of course, we offer enrichment opportunities. We always have the Experiment in International Living come and make a presentation. We bring as many students as we can, our own classes, but also
We invite the school to come. Anybody in the school that wants to bring their class, they can come down to the auditorium and have their students listen to the presentation to see if they'd be interested in studying abroad for the summer. It's anywhere from, I think they might have a 2-week program now, but usually it's 4 to 6 weeks, and there are several countries. And several of our kids have done it in the past. This past year, there have only been a couple. Brady Harris, I think, was the last one to go.
Yeah, it can run hot and cold, but there have been times where we've got
had
like
4 or 5, yeah.
a lot of kids out places for the summer.
I think it's so cool.
It's
I
a
think
great
it's like the
opportunity.
coolest thing ever. And they're based in Windham County, so they have a lot of cool Windham County specific scholarships, which make it more accessible to our kids, which is fabulous. I've taken kids for the past 3 years to the Hanover High School Poetry Recitation Conference contest, where they have students in the live languages. The students have to memorize the poem in Latin. They can read it. They don't have to memorize it, but they get more points for memorizing it. And they compete with other language students at their same level from, I don't know how many people go to it. A lot. Very many high schools in the area. I think it's like 15. It's a lot of maybe it's closer to 10, but it's between that of high schools in the area send students there to compete in reading those poems aloud. They're judged on the memorization of the piece, but also their pronunciation and delivery. I think it's totally fantastic, and 2 of the 3 years that I have gone, I've had students come back with prizes, so I'm so proud as well. That is a fun thing. There's my prizes. Bragging. So Julie's done a bunch of trips abroad, including.
I don't know if Spain is listed here, but Spain was from a couple of years ago.
Oh,
but,
no, I didn't.
2017 we went to Peru, and just recently this past April we went to Spain, Italy, and France, and had a 10-day tour there. It was an amazing trip.
Probably one of the largest groups you've taken.
It was the largest group since the trip to Spain several years ago. So yeah, it was a great group, great trip. I brought 16, came back with 16. So it's
Were they the same 16, or did you make
Yes,
some,
no,
make
it was
some
great.
changes? And it really has a big impact on the kids. It's amazing talking to the kids that participate in those trips, how really impactful they are on their well-being.
The crew trip, we did not do fundraising, but we had Amber Sanderson, who works a lot with parents here at the high school, and I guess within the whole district. But she worked really hard working with parents to set up fundraising, and she raised a ton of money with the parents as a whole. I don't know the total number, but it was, I should know the whole total number, but I only went to the events to be supportive. I really stepped back. I didn't want anything to do with the money aspect of it. I was just like, hi, I'm here to participate, but I didn't want anything to really do with it. But she really took the bull by the horns. She got a ton of money from Durand. I think you might have already heard about that, but
Faith Ford.
yeah.
You approved their donation.
Yeah, Faith
a little
Ford
while ago.
and Toyota, and so we were really lucky. We had the circus here. We did a thing with Shona, so we were able to raise a ton of money for that trip, which we hadn't done that in the past. So it was really helpful to have her help and the parents help to do that.
We're also do some field trips, some day-long field trips, or not even day-long during the day, that I've recently taken kids on, where there was a German language concert in Peterborough, New Hampshire. Sort of random to go to a concert in a gym in the middle of the day, but it was really fun. The kids really got into it and enjoyed it, and were kind of connected with that current kind of culture of Germany and like the pop music scene, and that was really fun. And then I went with the annual New York trip, and went to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, who have a fabulous Greek and Roman wing, including whole rooms that they took somehow from Pompeii and are there, and a really cool Etruscan chariot, and a lot of other Greek and Roman and ancient things that we were able to kind of engage with, and a lot of stuff too, especially in the Latin 2 class where we do a Hercules unit, that they were able to like kind of recognize the statues, and it was great. It was really fun. So the challenges that we face as a department, the biggest one really in my mind is scheduling. Due to like the nature of foreign languages, block scheduling is really, not block scheduling, semester scheduling is really, really difficult for foreign languages, because they're the type of thing that when you have a large gap, there's so much attrition, there's so much that you lose not being in contact with a foreign language. For even if it's over the summer, even teachers who have to teach more, traditional non-semester based schedules complain about over the summer, but we sometimes have kids take level 1 at the beginning of their freshman year, and they don't take to level 2 till the end of their sophomore year, or the end of their junior year, or in their senior year, yeah. And so there's a huge gap in, and there's just so much that it's like a use it or lose it kind of thing, and if they don't have the opportunity to use it. I have had some students that have been so interested that they have come to me every day and like had a little conversation every day, you know, but that you're not going to get every kid that is going to have a passion for it and is going to make time to make it part of their everyday life. And if we don't make it part of their everyday life, we really, in my view, deny them the opportunity to become as proficient as and as confident in the languages as we could with different scheduling. And yeah, and I also often see kids that like really, I don't know how this works. I know it's very complicated to do the master schedule, but I also know that that language often gets the back burner to other classes that are like classes that are only offered once. Like I've had tons of kids say to me, I really want to take Latin too, but I have to take Psych and Soc or something like that. So that there are these scheduling issues that I don't know this for sure because I don't have the opportunity, but I hope that there might in the future be more flexibility in the scheduling so that we're able to really provide kids with the best opportunities they can. I know that it is possible, not for every single kid, but I know that it is possible for some kids in 4 years to become proficient enough in a language to be comfortable going to that country and studying there, and we are not meeting that for our kids because of scheduling. We are certainly passionate and able to get kids there. We definitely have kids that are passionate and excited and capable of getting to that level of language, and there's a gap there. We're not meeting it. Also, lack of synchronization with the middle school is a challenge. It's challenging not to have an opportunity to present, especially for me, to present the different options to student and parents, and not really to get a chance to kind of make my pitch for the minority languages of Latin and German, and why that might be interesting to particular students or their parents on their behalf. I've also heard a lot of kids complain and say bad things about their foreign language experience in the middle school, and I think it affects, even if it's subtly, I think it affects their attitude towards foreign language as they come into our classrooms. I think we do a good job of having fun and turning that attitude around, but it is something that we're fighting against. Some visions for the future. Like I just ranted about, we would love to see fewer gaps between consecutive level of language, and really have kids that are able to make good use of their time in terms of progressing in a foreign language at a reasonable pace over the course of 4 years. More balanced class sizes. Right now we have sometimes really large Spanish classes, and sometimes really small. You know, we have some that are in the middle that are reasonable size, like we were saying ideal size is maybe around 12. So we definitely both have classes that are about that size, but it's a little lopsided on the other end. So kind of, although the Latin and German programs are only like 3 years old each. So we're kind of like moving in the right direction, but in the future we would like to continue moving in that direction. More trips abroad, more day trips to cultural events. There's certainly a lot of opportunity. A lot of times it's just generating interest, squeezing more than 24 hours out of the day. But I think those things are really fun, and I think we're going to continue to engage our students in those extracurricular ways. Something that I would really love to see happen, I think though we need a stronger connection with the middle school to make this happen, but there are really cool opportunities to study, especially engineering, but also science and technology in general in Germany at a fraction of the cost for what kids pay for those degrees in the United States that are equal, if not better, education, especially in engineering, if you take German all 4 years and if you are really consistent about doing it and don't have those big gaps. And like I said, it is possible in 4 years to be confident to go and study in a foreign language. So that's kind of my vision, that it's obviously not something that's right for every kid, but I would just love to be able to reach the kids that it is right for. I just think it's such a cool program that the Goethe Institute does. It's called Study Bridge, to help those students that are excited about, to have high math and science capabilities, grades, and also proficiency in German to be able to study at those amazing, like University of Aachen, which is like the best. They're amazing.
That's STEM, another one.
Yeah. So that is a dream of mine. It's possible that when I am done with my master's, we'll be able to do dual enrollment for the upper level German classes. I'm also working on on an endorsement to teach online, so there's a possibility of getting more VTVLC seats in exchange for my teaching Latin and German online. It's possible that I'll just continue doing that in an adjunct way, and that's cool too, but that's just a possibility for the future. Ooh, and that's it. Any questions? Yes?
One of the questions that we've debated around here for a long time is whether or not online, you kind of brought it at the end, the appropriateness or even possibility of online instruction, particularly when you do have, a handful of very passionate children, or you have somebody that wants to learn Portuguese or whatever it might be. And how is that, what's your view on that, and how would we make that happen?
So my view on it is that you need to be extraordinarily passionate and driven as a language student to make it work. And disciplined. Yeah. I think it is always better to have a live person that you're really using the language to communicate with, always. I do think that for certain students, or if you want to learn a real minority language, even one that I've never studied,
Is there one?
Then I do think that online is appropriate, but I think that I would hope that students, when possible, in terms of scheduling, are directed towards learning with live, other live human beings first, unless there is like a real drive or a scheduling need to pursue the online. That's what I would say. What do you think?
I would say so too, because as we mentioned, the student interaction is important as well. So I feel like students interacting with other students verbally and having that communicative aspect is very important. So if you're just typing on a computer, I mean, I've also done online learning, and for me, maybe it's because I'm old, but I just cannot imagine. Even though I love Spanish, I've tried doing online and I detest it.
You have to be super motivated. I learned.
I'm crazy motivated, but I cannot do online learning. I don't know why, and I'm an extremely driven person, but I cannot do online learning. I feel like I love being with people as much as I don't like to talk. I do like to talk, which sounds really contradictory, but
it's so true.
We talk all the time. So I mean, I'm a language teacher. That's what I do. I talk, but I think it's important to be with people and have that sense of community. And I that's one of the things I think, and I've said this before lots of times, that we do really well here at BFUHS. So I think that it's important to do that whenever it is possible. I think, like Lily said, that is very important to do that.
There's just one other thing, sorry, that I want to answer in that. I think the other thing that VTVLC, as far as is my understanding, has had trouble getting teachers for those minority languages. So like I would be super, like if there was someone who was like, I'm gonna learn Portuguese and I'm gonna really do it, like I would be super excited to support that student. But I think that there would be roadblocks beyond what's in our school community to actually getting curriculum that student could access. I don't know, I haven't, you would have to research it language by language, but I think that there would be roadblocks in that way as well.
Well, I would like to say that as someone who works very closely with VTVLC through my membership on behalf of this board on River Valley Tech Center board, that I completely accept your pedagogical explanation as to why active face-to-face language learning is really important. So you've made your point there, and I support you. I also want to say, and this is not necessarily strictly about your program, but every time I come to one of these meetings, Chris, and we have one of the departments come in here and present, I am continually blown away by both the quality and what I would say the level of involvement that we have in education. This is just such an incredible high school that it's too bad in a way that we don't have more kids here taking advantage of it. So, foreign language really hit it out of the park tonight, in my judgment, and I think you're to be commended for that. And I always have a question for departments, and that is that, as we edge closer toward budget time, what's on your wish list? Besides better coordination, of course, with middle school, and I absolutely accept the importance of that, and it really is something I think we need to pay attention to. But what's on your wish list that might possibly have any budget implications?
I mean, honestly, I don't want to regret saying this out loud.
Oh, go for it.
But I feel like we're really well financially supported.
Yeah, I do too.
It's hard to pass up an opportunity to ask for more. But I feel like we're really well financially supported. I mean, the things that are on my wish list that if you could put into your budget like a 36-hour day that I could take every week, that would be what I would. No,
I do have something.
No, go ahead.
I know that you're I guess I'm higher maintenance. But one thing I would really love, and I don't know enough about technology, I guess I haven't researched enough, but I feel like when I did look into it, it was pretty expensive, is my kids do a lot of videos, like Mr. Austin knows, and they often use their phones. But I would love to get a set of mics so they could be mic'd up with their it would be so cool.
Well, I was gonna say about videos. A lot of the video apps are easier to use on an iPad. So I could see having not a big set, but a set of maybe 6 iPads, so you could have the kids in groups of 2 or 3 iPadding each other.
But would the sound come out right?
I think
I worry about
that's
sound.
What they use for the green screen, but I think
mics
that
would be
with
so
the mics.
cool.
So David, write down iPads and mics.
And I also,
that'd be the coolest thing.
And there was something else. Oh, the other thing that's expensive, but it's so cool, is VoiceThread. Do you know about VoiceThread?
Yes, I've heard about VoiceThread.
It's really cool. I the school that I worked at before here, the Chinese teacher used it really effectively. And it's basically a way to give kids homework assignments, but we would do it in class, of uploading their own voices, and then you can comment on particular sites overall this is fine, but here's this one word, work on the R in the back of your throat for German, or whatever. You can really pinpoint where in their recordings, and you can do it with really short recordings or you can do it with longer recordings. It's pretty expensive though, when you pay for I think you pay for the license by student, and I think it's like $15 a student a year. Like it's a lot of money.
Was that 1.5 per student? Per
Yeah,
year?
but for each student a year,
That's
it's still a
expensive.
lot of money. It's a lot of money. That
Put
would
that on
be-
the list, will you please?
Jack and David can write you a check.
Well, let's just find out what we need and just look at this.
I'm gonna pull her away so you guys
Could
can
be
go
other
home
things.
tonight.
Oh yeah.
I'm just kidding. I mean, you don't have to, but.
Well, or you could just vote on a 36-hour day. Sorry. Yes.
Nice job,
Thank
ladies.
you very
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Didn't really answer all my questions, but I get a chance to ask.
Oh, thanks.
I used to go all the time.
Thank you to the foreign language report, superintendent report.
It is enclosed, but I thought it was worth bringing just the key parts of the report. Director of Professional Development. We have Missy Wilkins who will be heading up it's almost like, we're trying to create a center for professional development and outreach. And they'll be working with teachers, new teachers, anyone in the SU who needs assistance in professional development, hoping to offer more professional development to the teachers this year. So that's exciting. Next year we'll have a common local assessment, K through 12, which will be the MAPS. Measured annual progress systems that will be used in K through 12. And the only thing I've attached, it might be a little outdated, it's the update, the education legislation update number 8. The other thing is next year, and it's currently starting underway, is the Restorative Practices Program. I had to coordinate for that under the federal grants. Jesse Hall, and we're going to be working throughout the summer to start developing professional development for teachers and administrators, because I think it's important that as we move forward, the first kind of audience that we hit are the teachers and the administrators, so we know what restorative practices is and what it isn't. So we're hoping to move forward with that. Once we feel that the teachers and administrators understand it, we'll then move forward with students and working to see how that looks. The elementary schools will be using the Leader in Me as the restorative approach, with the first schools in Vermont to be using that. Central School piloted it last year with great success, so we chose that for the elementary restorative practices program. And that's just the highlights from the junior report.
Question? Because it affects us as a board that takes students from Westminster, Grafton, Athens. Where on earth is the Act 46 process right now? If you can briefly summarize it, just for us to know. Just briefly.
I defer to Jack on that one.
Briefly.
Briefly,
Briefly.
I got it. But we have a transitional board. It has met once. It anticipates meeting again the day of graduation for a bit. We anticipate having a meeting of the 3 towns and community. Probably the target is the 15th.
A public meeting of the entire district.
Yes. We are still taking the position that the district has been constituted illegally. That's still being worked out by the courts, but we need to do things like get budgets approved and make sure teachers are paid, and we are carrying on with those functions as best we can.
And the transitional board has currently no authority to borrow money or spend money.
There are diverging opinions on that, but since the people that cut the checks for us in Montpelier have an opinion, it probably is the one that counts until we solve
Well,
this.
don't the people who cut the checks be at the bank? I mean, don't we have a...
According to them, we are new. We are like a brand new entity. There is no transition except for when they want it to be. And one of those items is they're not treating the budgets as assets to seize like they've seized everything else.
Can the local 3 towns still write checks?
That is a discussion that will be happening very soon, possibly. I'll talk to you on that offline. Don't know yet.
You said there was some sort of meeting on the night of graduation?
For about 10 minutes.
Where
you
is
can
that?
Probably here if we can do it. We just need to.
What
we
time?
Need, at 5. We need to confirm the warning that will be for the July 15th.
A meeting of how many people? How big?
6.
Is this size? Okay, yeah.
We can meet in your office if it comes down to it. I don't care. Outside the parking lot. It's nothing to me.
Okay.
Hasn't been technically warned yet, so if this space doesn't work,
Okay, we can talk.
yeah.
Anything else for our superintendent? Move on to principal's report.
So this has been a very hard last few weeks for us here, as probably many of you have heard. We had a 9th grade student. His name is Vincenzo Ruggiero, who passed away as a result of a car accident that happened on the weekend of May 19th. He was a great kid, well liked by many, well known by many. Had gone through our elementary schools through 4th grade, Saxons River Elementary, then spent 4 years at Kern Hatton, and then back here with us. And there are a lot of students who initially and still are struggling to find their path through grief and remembrance. And so we're supporting students to do that. And I just want to publicly commend our guidance staff, all of our counselors, Mr. Broadley, for the support that they've provided. And I will also note that Vinny's dad, Jimbo, has been here a lot in support of students who are trying to make sense out of the senseless. So it's not your typical wrap-up of the school year. So, but I just needed to share that with you folks, again, in the outside chance that someone might not have known about that. On to some more uplifting information. We have 2 more state championships in track. Some of you may have heard that. This year we moved up from Division III, where the boys had won 5 in a row and the girls had won 3 in a row, and it was time to access a little bit more challenge for our teams. And they came through like the champions that they are. So we went to the Division II track meet. As the season began, our coaching and you can kind of predict these things, because you can literally score out a potential state championship by just knowing all the folks in there, their best times or distances in all of the events. And Coach Tim Eno, who has been coaching track for many years, is very good about doing his homework. So it was looking like a relatively easy path for the girls and a potential outcome for the boys of a state championship, and it actually kind of worked the other way around. The boys won by 27 points, had it well in hand from about 2/3 of the way through the track meet on. And for the girls, it literally came down to the last race, and we were tied with Rice. And Rice had been a 3-time in a row on the girls' side state champion. And that was the 4x400 relay. So very much a team aspect. The last handoff, and 400 is 1 full lap around the track. So 4 girls in a relay, 4 times around the track. Rice made their last handoff about 6 seconds ahead of us. And we had our best 400 runner. Her name is Jasmine Boucher. And it was just unbelievable to see her go around that track and passed her before the second turn. And it was history, and we won by 2 points. So it was a very exciting day up in South Burlington for both the boys and the girls. And sad to say that was also Coach Eno's last year coaching track. So he's moving on, and we'll be looking for a new track coach.
What a way to go out.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, U32 boys had won like 6 years in a row in Division Two.
Yep.
Schools don't like to see Bellows Falls show up in the, oh my goodness, they moved up a division, because Division One found out about field hockey and Division Two found out about track. The interesting piece, though, is, and I didn't know this until the very end when people filled me in, there were a lot of other teams rooting for us. That was exactly it. They were sick of U32 winning, and they were sick of Rice winning, and so when we got our awards, it was surprising. Let's just put it that way.
There's a non-trivial amount of social media posts.
Yeah. Oh yeah, did I mention that the Envirothon won state championship as well? So there you go. There's a lot of great stuff going on here. For Envirothon, that is 5 out of the last 7 years, and I will note, in one of those years that we didn't win the state championship in these past 7 years, we didn't have enough people to send a team. So good for those other schools on that day, but so that is one of those science competitions that also has an international competition. They used to call it the North American competition, but it's an international competition that we send our state championship team to every year. This year they'll be going over the summer to North Carolina to compete. And I believe every year we've been working our way up the 50 states and Canada and Mexico. There's about as far as international that it goes, but so there's that. And if that wasn't good enough, we'll be graduating a class here before the week is out. So again, for your own evening activities, class night is Wednesday. Class night is when we give out our awards, and the community is so generous and give out lots of money to send our kids off to do fantastic things in life after high school. 7 p.m. here this Wednesday, class night. Bring your calculator, figure it out for yourself, but lots of money gets given away. And graduation is Thursday at 6:30. The weather's not looking great, so we might end up being inside for the first time since, well, the last time I had a kid graduate. And so, so we'll see how the weather goes for that, but we might be in the gym. That's all I got.
Thank you. Is there a student report today?
No.
Edie, business manager?
Yeah. Well, I'd like to give you some good news. We don't have any news at the moment. We went through a special ed audit this year. We only had 3 items that they questioned, which was awesome. But during the process, new people have new interpretations of the regs. And so now they're saying that our out-of-district students, we need to be paying a portion of their tuition as regular ed. And of course, the regular ed piece is not reimbursable. So Andy and his staff are working on finding out exactly what portion of each student's time is in a regular ed program. And then I will do the calculation. Right now, the worst that it could hit the high school is 90,000. We're hoping it's going to be considerably less than that. Without that, we were still looking at a $60,000 surplus. So it's, I hate to say we're going to have to wait and see, but we do. I'm not, and I don't know Andy isn't, we're not ready just to say we'll take the state average tuition and call it close enough, because I think we can do way better than that, and I don't want to lose the reimbursement that it could be as much as between $94,000 and $100,000 in reimbursement we could lose. So we're working on that, and we'll keep you posted.
You can keep in mind with that, it was we're selected randomly for an audit. And right now, it's the only SUs that were audited are having to move forward with this statute that has never been in place. SUs have given the AOE that information in the past, but nothing has been done with it. So because we were audited, it's been about a month so far that Andy and his staff have been looking at it and working with Edie and myself to get a comparable number of what we owe the state.
David?
Thank you, Molly. Some of us at the table will recall a few years ago, we got a colonoscopy from AOE on special ed that cost us several $100,000. And it's probably no coincidence that they've come back to Wyndham Northeast looking for more. And I do have a question. And this is a general question that I don't expect to have answered tonight, but I presume that most of these are day placements, but some are not day placements. And I would certainly think that on a residential placement that that formula ought to be based on regular ed classroom times based on a 24-hour day, because that's why they're in that placement. And that obviously would be a more favorable ratio than if they simply say the kid starts at 8 o'clock in the morning and goes till 2:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah, it is the out-of-district placements.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I understand this is out-of-district placements, but I, of course, believe they're in an out-of-district placement because the entire placement should be for SPED reasons and not just partially for SPED reasons. But I'm also suggesting that if we have residential placements, and I frequently do sign warrants for the Meadows program down at the retreat, which I believe is inpatient, that it seems to me that if you're going to treat 2 hours as regular ed, that's 2 hours out of 24.
Yeah, and that's exactly the work that Andy's been doing, and with his staff is exactly what you're saying for those areas. So.
Well, there are two applicable principles here, Chris. The first is great minds think alike, but the one that might be more appropriate is fools seldom differ.
Leave that one alone.
I have a question that might be more easily explained. The building and operations maintenance line is over by $391,000, but there's probably a straightforward reason for that.
That was the final phase of the HVAC
So that
system.
there's a revenue side of that comes from a reserve fund.
Yeah.
It still went in the hole. We planned ahead for that
Yeah.
by about 5,000 that we planned for. There were other things in the project that also took us a little deeper in the hole, but yeah, the vast majority of that, there's a revenue trail from a reserve fund back to the budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not even borrowed money, it's from reserve
It's from
fund.
reserve fund, yeah.
Good.
Yeah,
Great.
capital reserves.
Okay, so that's no surprise. Great.
I have a similar question about the safety and security line item. I'm just wondering what that is. and-
We had a grant that came through. All of the schools got a grant. So yeah, the expense would be offset by state grant funds.
So what was the grant for? Was this for video?
Yeah,
footage?
expanding our camera coverage on the property.
Yeah.
Originally, we got a low amount
got
of
like $395.
And then they came back to me last month and said, after all the work has been done, would you like the 25,000? So we said, yes, we do.
Oh, for 25,000 for the super SU.
For the
No, for the high school.
Oh, high school.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, sure.
We graciously accepted and said, yes, we would like that.
Yeah.
Jack?
Yeah, two questions. First one is, an old auditor friend of mine always said, you look at it, but you look at these things, and one of the things you always look at is if you get a lot of items that are $1 or less where there's variance. There's a lot of them here. Oftentimes, usually people miss big or one way or the other. They rarely come in within $1, and at some point I'd like to understand that a little bit better without getting into more detail. The other question I have is regular education here has a probably a specific definition, but I noticed that of all of this, that it's under budget significantly, and I was wondering if there's any help in understanding that.
You're right, that covers like everything that's not special ed.
Right.
Right.
So what it is us paying attention to our nickels and dimes in all lines, and so, I mean, I don't. There's no easy explanation to a.
I would have
line
asked it
item.
if it was easy.
Well, a line item that is made up of most of the line items in the budget. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So
Yep.
we saved money,
And you haven't yet expended the whole year's worth.
and there's
of-
that too.
Right.
I'm good.
Okay, everyone's all set with business manager? Committee, CIP committee update?
It's the Continuous Improvement Plan Committee. I can't recall who was there from this board, but we met a few weeks ago and Lynn reviewed all the different goals that were on the SIPs and brought to the attention that is an SU-wide SIP and how it reflects what we're doing in the district currently and what we're going to be doing moving forward. So I don't know if there's anyone who was here who wanted to add their perspective on how that meeting went. So was there anyone here?
Is anyone supposed to be from here on that?
Mm-hmm.
Are there committee representatives from this board on that?
I don't know off the top of my head, but each board has a
we do.
representative from their board on that committee.
Okay. And how would that representative know about the meeting?
I had my office send emails out to remind everyone of that meeting.
So who is the representative from the high school?
I'd have to look.
Apparently the person
I
who
know
is
it's
doesn't
not
know
me.
either.
Yeah, I have a hard time defining the education, our local curriculum committee
saying.
versus our SU-wide curriculum committee.
Maybe I can be helpful in this.
I don't know, maybe.
Well, let's try. We started the education committee well before before it was mandated that curriculum be centered at the SU level.
Mm-hmm.
I think the hope has been, and the discussion we had tonight highlighted the issue, that continuity of instruction, particularly in things like math and language, are things where I'm hoping we'll really focus on. But there's a lot of programming that happens in this building that the public and we don't know anything about. And since we spend the money, it's useful for us to understand what it is we're spending the money on. And these presentations were initially kind of painful, but they've become extremely good over the number of years, and not only are they getting a lot of good coaching from their principal, you can really tell the quality of instruction is improving because they're more prepared to answer tough questions.
Yeah, and the continuous improvement plan, would be, I believe, the second or third year that the state had rolled those out, and when I took over in the summertime, each district had their own SIP plan, but looking at it, they all pretty much looked the same. They were just cut in pieces. So we got approval from the state to have one continuous improvement plan. And what that improvement plan does is that it keeps us moving forward in the direction that we're not all off in isolation doing our own thing. We're setting very clear guidelines, because without that SIP, we can't spend the grant monies, the millions of grant monies that we have. And so that's kind of, the state uses that continuous improvement plan, saying if we're going to be asking for grants for it, it's got to be reflected in the SIP plan. And the SIP plan is vague in some ways and specific in others in regards to it really outlines the direction of the SU, but still gives the flexibility to each individual school.
But I think this discussion and this little outcome show the hole in the plan of curriculum being done just at SU level, because there is actually, as it turned out, no involvement from the high school in this curriculum planning, and yet, as we saw tonight, there is an issue of foreign language not having coordination with the middle school. And frankly, that supervisory union curriculum plan is not going to get into the weeds to that depth of what does the foreign language committee or foreign language teachers at the high school need from the middle school. That's,
Why not?
why not? Because you're focusing on trying to get the reading and math okay from elementary school up, and it's not. It just doesn't. I'm just saying it did not get
I know,
done.
but the continuous improvement plan, okay, that is the first year. It does not just address ELA and math. It covers the gamut.
I
So-
agree, but what we're proving here, you've just proven it does not get done. That there was no high school involvement in this curriculum committee, and there, and of course we only know from this evening on about the foreign languages concerns about the middle school, and that would then only be achieved, frankly, on a more immediate level of having a concerns brought to either our board, as they have been, or to a curriculum planning meeting in this board, who could then approach the same board and teachers in the middle school. And it would be teachers, administrators in the high school approaching teachers in middle and administrators in the middle school, and it's going to be sort of direct school to school, and it's just not going to get done at the SU level.
I'm going to have to respectfully disagree with that because you're basing your opinion on speculation here.
Well, but show me it getting done. It doesn't seem to be getting done.
This is the second year of the continuous improvement plan. Things don't happen overnight. So you're entitled to your opinion, but I disagree.
I want to address Mr. Major's question. I partly agree with him, but I want to make a real distinction. We have a new superintendent, this new sheriff in town here, and I spent way too much time with him over the last couple of months. But one of the things I will tell you in the context of that is he is committed to the continuity issues that have been surfaced here. He had effectively a performance audit done by an outside consulting group that reported the SU that once again highlighted the urgency of the issue. It is my hope that in not too distant future, what the education committee does here will be replicated at the SU level. One of the barriers to that has been sort of this 46 catastrophe that's eaten up everybody's spare time. Once that is resolved one way or the other, I think this is going to be a major focus of the SU board, and I already know it's a focus of the administration. I see Lynn and Chris working on it on a regular basis, and he's getting a lot of input from a lot of people on boards about it. So I can just tell you that.
I just think it's going to be very difficult to get a SU-wide board meeting enough times, not just a couple times a year or whenever you can drag people together who don't even know they're supposed to be on the board, to meet and talk about these issues. And it's not just foreign language, it's coordination with the band, it's coordination frankly, with this high school foreign language department and the grammar school, not in this district at all, foreign language department, who teach French and not German, Latin, or Spanish. So I basically say that sometimes those issues actually have to be handled in-house by the people who see the problem, because if you're looking at too much of the overview, you don't see the problem. And that's my concern and criticism.
Yeah, and well, just so you know, the process of the SIP, the administrative team worked on it, and that's representative of every principal in the SU. So there was some input there. You know, you're right. There should have been a representation on that SIP committee when it was approved by that committee from the high school. There wasn't. The notifications were sent out. I don't know why. You know, things come up for people, and and that's fine. But and I understand what you're saying, and hopefully we're moving in that direction, because it's only been year one right now in regards to what we're looking at in regards to moving forward as a supervisory unit.
I think you're trying to take too much in-house, where it's the foreign language teachers here, maybe in communication with the principal, who will bring to the surface this sort of issue. Or the band teacher.
We understand.
Yeah, so that's my
There's
concern.
one thing that I couldn't find it on my little phone here while you guys were talking. Sue did send that out where each one of us, what committees we signed up, wherever we got placed and what we asked for.
It's in our drive.
Yeah.
2019
Okay.
organizational committees.
I knew it
Everybody's
was, but
there,
I
yeah.
just couldn't pull it up to say, here it is. So, we will send out a reminder tomorrow so that everybody knows what committees they're on.
I was
And-
pulling that up, and I'm actually the representative to that. But an email was sent out that Wednesdays do not work for me. So
Okay.
I was trying to find it when there was
Thank
all
you.
this discussion going on.
Thank
so.
you. Hold on, just want to, David, you still have something you'd
Well,
like to say?
what I wanted to say is that I actually wanted to cover some of this under the WNESU board report.
Okay.
It should be pretty soon, I think.
I think it's
Yeah.
coming right up.
Yeah.
Okay, David, you're up.
Okay, and I'm presuming that means there's no policy committee update?
Oh.
No, I
have
already
no
went over with the policies
I
that
thought
before, so.
Okay. In April, we had a presentation from Futures, I believe their name was, Chris. And they did a very extensive look around on our special ed program. And it was very interesting, and I think I've already discussed this last month, but they identified some, really good best practices in this district, and noted that unfortunately we don't do a very good job of sharing those best practices across the schools. I think it was very clear from that meeting that doing a better job of special education delivery is really, one of the major activities for the superintendent's office. And I'm hopeful that the SU will continue to check in and monitor progress. This past SU meeting, we started out with a presentation from the auditors. R.H.R. Smith, was that their name, Edie?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they're actually from Maine, but Mr. Smith himself is from St. Johnsbury, so he's not totally unfamiliar with the landscape, so to speak. And I want to say that it was very clear in that presentation that R.H.R. Smith thought that we run a pretty tight financial operation. We also had part of an extensive SIP presentation from the Assistant Superintendent, Lynn Carey. And I actually cut her off because we had a fairly lengthy agenda. But I have had subsequent discussions with Lynn, and my comment, and I'm speaking here as a board member and not as making board policy, but it's my very strong feeling that we need to have a continuing dialogue with Lynn over SIP programming as it impacts all of the schools in the WNESU. And I am a believer that we should be taking what I would refer to as the long view at the SU table in terms of how we're doing overall with the SIP program and gaining the understanding. But I was also in Westminster last week when there was a local presentation about SIP. And it's my belief that the two critical in terms of programmatic delivery across the schools that the superintendent's office needs to be on top of, and I believe is on top of, are doing a better job with special ed, which will also, I think, net us some overall savings, and do a continuing job of communicating with both the SU board and the individual boards about, what is up with SIP and how we're monitoring our progress. I mean, your points are well taken, Stephen, because there is an awful lot of frustration, I think, at this table when we realize that we're not doing an effective job maybe communicating with the middle school, and possibly not just in foreign language. But I think that the SIP initiative will improve those situations, and I think the board members like yourself need to have that involvement. And we'll stop right there because I suspect there's a comment coming, and then I'll finish with the rest of the issue. So I would like to yield to my distinguished colleague from Westminster.
So my concern and my belief is that the SIP process and the SU curriculum coordination can do a good job with those big issues like special ed. And that is actually what will consume the lion's share of the time, and because they're the big dollar amounts and they're big issues for us. But the corresponding concern is, as a high school board, we still have curriculum issues of our own that we need to consider, and we cannot just believe it's all taken care of by the SU. For instance, half of Westminster students don't go to the middle school who come here. So how are they, what is their progress through algebra? With their math curriculum. What are our issues with the Hilltop Montessori School or the Dummerston Central School as they come here? Those are our issues. They're not actually the SU's issues, but they do affect the town of Westminster, my town, and other towns who don't send students to the middle school. So we have issues on each of our curriculum areas that are actually independent of this stepwise transition through the Wyndham Northeast SU, or are just too detailed to really draw the attention of a board that's also trying to work on the big cost items like special ed. So what is our middle school courses that are leading up to our social studies courses in U.S. history or citizenship and preparation for citizenship? Where are we? Well, I don't believe that that's going to have time at the SU level to deal with those. And if we don't meet here as any sort of curriculum committee, then we're not discussing it here either. And I think it's a whole that we're not actually talking about those. It's great to hear these presentations from the departments, but I feel powerless to use that information to take it beyond. So if the science department tells us that they wish to have some other change in the biology curriculum or the time allocated for biology in this building, I don't think that's going to be dealt with at SU, and the certainly administration can present changes fait accompli to us in a budget form. But if we want to talk about it within the board after a presentation, we needed a forum to talk about it, and I feel that we're lacking that forum. And that's sort of where I'm coming from. It's not that the SU's the wrong place to deal with K through 12 curriculum coordination, but there are some high school issues that we're not discussing, and yet we're hearing about.
And I think clarification is needed. The SIP, okay, after listening, to what you had to say, the SIP is how we use grant funds to support what's going on the curriculum.
SIP stands for?
Continuous Improvement Plan.
School Improvement Program?
CIP.
Oh, CIP.
Continuous Improvement. So I think some clarification is needed, is that it doesn't take over the local control of the curriculum as everything that's going on, whether it's music or foreign language. What it does, it shows the state if there are programs within the SU in different schools, we have to say, all that SIP does is say, this is how we're using the federal money for the local programs. So it doesn't supplant what each local school can do. It just says, if this is what the local school wants to do, then we have to work it into our SIP plan so we can hopefully use federal money to support that.
But if we're just working with our own regular budget, our own curriculum, I feel that we have perhaps not worked hard enough on we're not actively ongoing working on curriculum here. Haven't been for some years.
At the board table, do you mean?
At the board table,
Okay.
not at the administration level. I think you guys do great, but at the board table, we hear about it. We don't discuss it. We don't direct any changes. we just passively receive your excellent leadership. But
You're welcome.
thank you. But nevertheless, if we wanted to have any input or we had heard stuff, we have no processing of that.
And I would disagree with you there.
Yeah, can I just speak to that for one moment?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I've heard everything you've said completely, and I'm glad I knew what that stood for, but I wanted to hear it come out. And maybe most of us on this board trust our administration a lot. I do believe that once we have seen these presentations, that it has brought that to the forefront for us to see that maybe there's some things that, as a board, we want to think, okay, those ladies today did an awesome job, and it sounds like they really are, they love what they're doing, and they're great for our kids, and if they need this little bit of stuff to make their class better, then we want to try to make that happen. So, as a board member, you can shoot us an email and tell us that on the next board meeting you want to have on the agenda to speak about what we can do for the foreign language department and the last music and arts people to talk about that, so that when Chris and the administration starts writing up a budget, he has an idea of what maybe we need to get into that. We have that opportunity to do that.
But do we have do we have any functional committee structure dealing with that at smaller than the board level, about whether it's entitled curriculum committee or educational effectiveness committee? Is there a committee? Does it meet? And
But that's the whole point
my
of
feeling
the
it hasn't
committees that we
it
have.
hasn't been meeting.
Is so that, forgive me, I was not at that SIP meeting, but my job should have been to give kind of an update to those
do we have
meetings.
a
So I
separate
think
committee for
each
that?
committee is the representation, correct me if I'm wrong, is responsible to come back to the board and report
That's why we have department.
or give an update.
So that's why we have department heads.
I mean, am I wrong?
The SIP committee is a different thing than what Mr. Major is really trying to talk
I'm
about.
talking
I
about
believe.
it
But we have department heads, correct, in every department, and they
Coordinators,
meet.
we call 'em, but yeah.
They meet with Chris and whoever else Chris has on that to discuss these things. And please correct me if I'm wrong, Chris. And then that's my understanding through the years of being on these boards is they come to you at a certain time of year when you say, come to me ready for what you want to get into your budget for your department. And then we do our best to be able to support them in what we can, and still keep the budget in a realistic mode so that we can have a budget that passes.
Yep.
Am I correct in all that?
But
I'm not trying to
do more than
simplify
that
this,
too, but yes, that's
but that's, I think, so when you're asking, why aren't we meeting, I think you're asking that us as a board ought to start talking more about each department in the high school after you've seen these presentations, and if you would like that, we could put one at a time on the board, on the, agenda, and we could have a larger discussion about what we all think should happen, but we have those things in place where that happens.
But there's two possible processes there. One is to have essentially a committee of the whole board meeting at, say, the next meeting to talk about the previous presentation. The other would be to actually have, we do have an educational effectiveness committee, to have it actually meet and talk about those things, inviting any member of the board who's interested at half an hour before the meeting or something of that sort. So question to you as a leader of this board, which way do we have those discussions? Do we have them within the monthly board meeting? Is there time to do it within the monthly board meeting? Or do we outsource those to there's a named committee, the Educational Effectiveness Committee, to have that discussion? And it can go either way. My only point is I do feel that we should be having discussions one way or the other.
Yep, I'm good with that, but we just need to, Chris, go ahead.
So let me just make a couple of points. First of all, There was, I want to acknowledge there was a lot of really good conversation leading to really good outcomes from when we met as a subcommittee with educational effectiveness. But one thing that I want to just point out, and this is where an educational effectiveness committee can put boards and board members on a slippery slope, is the defined function of school boards is rather narrow.
Thank you.
That's right.
Budget,
Budget and staff.
policy, hiring licensed individuals, and that's that. One of the goals of these presentations that we've been doing is to initiate the kinds of conversations that you're talking about, which I think are probably more productive with a whole board as opposed to a subcommittee. But it's to let folks know on whatever regular basis is necessary to keep people in the know what's going on, and to give both the teachers the opportunity to highlight either strengths or weaknesses or wish list, or to give the board the opportunity to hear something and go, wow, I'd like to pursue that at the board level a little more deeply. So that's why we have these presentations, is so that you can hear, gosh, maybe there's room for us as a board to act on the how do we coordinate better with the middle school. If you hear that as a theme across, I'm not saying you did, but I'm just picking that example as a theme across curricular areas, there's an opportunity to run with something that can make a big difference. But some of the words you use, Stephen, around board, I'm not looking to put words in your mouth, but what I took away from it was board active involvement in curricular matters. Well, depending on how you interpret that, when Lily Hart comes to me and says, I would really like to run a mythology class, I empower her to start out by brief description, followed by course objectives, followed by ever-growing detailed curriculum. But we don't go outside the content area experts on that. And so I think we want to be careful about how deeply board members become actively involved in that process.
True. I thoroughly agree.
Okay.
I just think we are in here, we're hearing presentations.
And I want you to run with that stuff. I want you to take some
Sometimes
notes.
we want to use, or at least express ideas about it in some sort of format, whether it's at a whole board level or at a committee level. Frankly, I'm just as happy with a whole board level because it's one less meeting a month. That's okay with me. But it does take a little time.
And
Has
it does.
a little,
And if you notice,
slot in the
board
schedule.
agenda not all that full, giving us time to have a good presentation and follow-up conversation.
Jack.
I just want to confirm Chris's point, and something my colleague Steve Fine used to say when he was chair of this board over and over again, which is that our responsibilities are staffing, policy, and finance. So we asked the questions, what do you need in terms of staffing? Not that long ago, we found out that the guidance department was absolutely overwhelmed. So we fixed that. That's how a board should work. We've found out stuff about safety in schools through these presentations, and we acted on it. We use this information every year for budgets, because I know personally, because I'm on that committee usually, and we ask every committee, every department, what do you need? Those are the things that we need to do. We need to ask the questions, we need to find out what you need, we need to have confidence that the program is running well, because we hire him based on whether they are or not, and we got that answer tonight, as we often do, that's running pretty damn well. And I think that's what we needed to find out.
David?
Molly, if we beat up on SIP long enough,
We
I
have.
would like to finish up the
Thank
WNESU
you.
report. And that is to say that the third item of discussion was the VSBA dues. And I will be brief in this portion of my report, and that is to say that the SU board did support the recommendation of the reps from Athens, Grafton, and Westminster, that the Ath, Graf, Westminster portion of the VSBA dues be remitted to the Alliance of Vermont School Board members to support the ongoing litigation over Act 46. I do also need to say that I recused myself from the voting because I currently am the executive director of the Alliance of Vermont School Board members.
Must be pointed out, serving without pay is that comes up.
That's my report.
Thank you very much. Would we like to talk about VSBA dues more?
Do we need to be reallocating that money at this board? Have we done that?
Well, you're addressing the question to me, which I think you should address to this board.
Well, I'm trying to remember if we've acted on that. I know the SU didn't. Let that decision be made at the individual board level. I just don't remember if we've ever done anything.
So we have it on our next agenda item. So let's let Mr. Pratt have a conversation about it.
So that's been put back on the agenda because at the SU meeting, what it was is that for the most part, it seemed like all boards that were present around the table for the SU meeting voted to not pay the VSBA dues. Rockingham decided that they, not that they have a choice, they were outvoted, but what they would want is their portion to be put back into their budget. So, I think Rockingham was the only board that came up with that. So,
Mr. Clark.
Well, I will point out, just maybe as a discussion opener, and that is to remind this board that we are also a party to the Act 46 litigation.
So do we now have to decide what to do with our VSBA line item?
Kind of sounds like it.
that's what it sounds like.
Mr. Breyer.
I move that we allocate our portion of the VSBA dues to the Alliance to continue to support the litigation that we voted to support some months ago.
Second.
Deb.
As this line item was voted in by the voters, can we reallocate it to something of that nature without their input? That's the question.
I would say that we allocate money at a lump sum basis, and we reallocate, as you can see from the variance line here, on a fairly frequent
I'm not saying
basis.
I'm against it. I'm just saying it's
Edie?
that's kind of divergent
What do you think?
use of the funds.
The voters vote a bottom line, and this is in the SU budget, not in the high school budget. So I would think that the discussion would need to be at the SU level.
You did that.
We did that.
The SU asked the individual boards to decide on their portion.
Okay.
So we're having discussion about our portion.
So, yeah, then you all should decide whether you want to send it to the VSBA, get it back because it's part of your assessment, or send it to the Alliance.
Mr. Clark.
I'm going to give you the motion that was made at the supervisory union table. I think it was October 24th. And that motion specifically was, I move that the supervisory union board seek the guidance of the individual school boards within the district as to how they wish to allocate their portion of the Vermont School Boards Association annual dues, and authorize the supervisory union to act upon those decisions on their behalf. And that was a motion by Jack Breyer, pardon me, no, that was a motion by David Major, seconded by Charles Chase, which was passed unanimously.
There was a vote at the SU meeting.
I'm going to get you in and Colin.
My understanding is, though, that the board, the WNESU board, when we met, said that voted down sending it to the VSBA as dues. So we cannot at this point, as an individual board, send our portion for dues because we have to do it as a general WNSU board.
yeah.
So now we've got to decide what we want to do with this.
I think the actual motion, you know, what was voted on was, and the only board that did not agree to that was Rockingham, that all the other boards voted to not pay the VSBA and put that money towards the Alliance.
Right. And the question was whether or not there was an open question about whether we had ever formally done that. I kind of thought we had, but since it's an issue, I'm simply resurfacing it to have us be on the record.
I think it was already voted.
I thought we did too, but my question is, what exactly is for this individual board, what is the piece, the monies?
How much is it?
That we vote, that the voters voted on?
$100.
I don't have that.
We're not.
I'd have to look up your share of the assessment for that.
But I agree with Mr. Breyer's comment.
For
too,
the
because
board section, what your percentage is.
I remember talking about those.
Well, that's why I phrased it the way I did, because I
Right.
didn't want to avoid the issue of the dollar amount, but just
So
say
where
whatever.
do we need to go from here?
I don't think there
Vote
is
yes.
anywhere to go, because at the last
Okay.
SU meeting, everyone except for Rockingham voted to move that money towards the Alliance to support the lawsuit.
We don't need a
Then
motion.
we're-
There is a motion on the floor,
With the
though.
understanding that we've already done it, I'll withdraw the motion.
Thank you.
So it's already been done.
Can I ask a question here? And that is that the
Because it's saying we
purpose
already
of the
authorized it
supervisory
some time ago.
union board motion that was
To send it to
made
the
and
Alliance.
passed in October was to
move
seek
on.
this
Jesus
board's
Christ.
guidance as to what to do with it. I'm not sure that
Dear
question's been
resign.
answered.
In other words, we do
I'm
need the
talk to you
motion.
about this.
Well,
So
my
we
understanding,
do need
and you're the chair of the SU board, so help me out. My understanding is that this was already voted on at the SU level, that money was gonna go to the Alliance. So if we need to do it as a board like we started to do, because it got sent back to us and we need to deal with it, then that's what I think we were trying to do.
That's what I was
The funds that
intending.
were transferred based on the supervisory union vote at the last meeting were the portion of the VSBA dues that
Each board owns.
were allocated to Athens, Grafton, and Westminster. Those boards through their representatives indicated at the SU meeting that it was their desire to use those funds to support the litigation, and that was supported by a motion of the SU board to allocate the Athens, Grafton, Westminster portion of the VSBA dues to the Act 46 litigation.
But the high school was not put into that.
The high school portion of those dues, the question was deferred so that this board could specifically act on it.
Okay.
And what I would suggest
you
is we
should
sort of
make
need
I
an
guess
up
I
and
put my
down
motion back on the table.
motion tonight.
There you go.
So
Can we call the motion already? I got
we
a
have
very
the motion.
important
Anything
meeting.
anything else to do? Meeting.
Josh, are you all set with the motion?
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Jack,
yes.
please repeat
To
your motion. Let's
Repeat
get
the
it
motion
rolling.
that this board formally allocate its portion of the dues for the VSBA instead to the Vermont Alliance of School Board members. Yes,
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
the VSBA.
Thank you, Mr. Major.
And I'll call the question because I think we've already discussed it. to
All
death.
those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
I'm going to ask the chair and clerk to record my abstention from the vote, please.
So we have one no and one. Okay, move on.
So is it passed?
It has.
It has passed, sir.
You gotta say that.
I figured you were doing enough. You were gonna get that for me
Doesn't
too.
work that way.
New business. Approve, sign, tax, anticipated loan document.
I would like to move that we approve the tax anticipated loan document for signature.
I'll second.
All those in favor of signing the approved loan document, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
You want me to sign right here, huh?
Mm-hmm.
9B is to accept resignation of board clerk and
We have an appointment.
appoint.
Madam Chairman, I think number 10A, is that?
No, we're 9B right now. We were
Okay.
gonna take that to executive and we
Oh.
do not need to.
Okay,
So 9B was an adjustment of the agenda
I'm
for
sorry.
resignation of board clerk and to assign a new clerk. Mr. Breyer.
I nominate Deb Wright as the new board clerk.
I'm already the VP.
Pardon me?
She's the VP.
She's already vice
I mean,
chair.
He gave you this,
so
did you
she-
read it?
Yes, but I guess you
Can you
can't,
accept
Deb,
two?
you can't be both the vice chair and the clerk, I don't believe. So I'm gonna
Well-
suggest you might want to temporarily
Yeah.
withdraw, not be
Jack,
that? Yes?
Time out for a second.
Yeah.
Let's accept the resignation of the
Sorry.
board clerk first.
Yes,
If I could have a
indeed.
motion for that, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Stephen.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept the resignation of board clerk. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Now we need to assign a new board clerk. And is there someone who would like to be clerk who doesn't already have a title at the end of their name?
I'll make a motion to nominate Priscilla Lambert as clerk.
Perfect.
Second that.
What do I have to do?
Madam Chair, one of the reasons
Minutes
for
of
the necessity of
Josh
this
doesn't show us.
is it has to do with the signatures on current diplomas. And we have our assistant chair was good enough to sign those diplomas, but she, in her current capacity, is the assistant chair. She is not the clerk. So in order to straighten this out, she needs to become
So we
the
will-
clerk.
No, I mean, I think, no, because it was more of a time-sensitive situation to have her sign those when we did, so, and those are already signed, so I think, that's fine. She signed as assistant chair for the clerk, so there's no, it's diploma, it's not
Okay,
like
all right,
binding
that
stuff,
was
so
the-
it's just
Need
a
a
matter
clerk
of having a
for-
new clerk.
Clerk is supposed to
Sign the
be a
minutes.
signer of documents.
Sign the
right?
minutes, okay.
Want to do
I
that?
can
You can
manage that.
handle it?
Also,
I
doesn't
can
the
manage
clerk
that.
take
So
minutes
if you-
if Josh doesn't show up?
Okay, you want to do
Okay,
that?
so we have a motion on the table for Priscilla Lambert to be the clerk of this board, and there was a second?
I'll
There
second.
wasn't, I'll
I
be-
second.
All those in favor of Priscilla being the clerk of their board, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Did she ever accept?
Thank you.
What was Priscilla
Gotta speak louder.
I'm gonna have you do it, so make sure you
Appointment?
don't get annoyed.
So we are asking you for a motion to appoint Richard Smith as our part-time choral music teacher. Some of you may be familiar with him in that he has served us musically as the accompanist for the spring musical for the last 3 to 5 years. So if you've come to the musical and seen a shiny bald-headed guy on the piano, that's Richard Smith. But that's not the extent of his qualifications. He got his undergraduate at the University of Utah, a bachelor's in music education. He got a master's in music education from Boston University. Go Terriers.
Indeed.
He has teaching experience both at Vermont Academy and at schools in Utah, where he had success in growing programs. He has worked here as a substitute teacher, so he's something of a known quantity. And he's also bringing to the program a professional background, an extensive professional background in various production companies, including Disney. And there's a reason why he was really good with Beauty and the Beast, because he did that stuff also with Disney. So, anyhow, Richard Smith.
Can I have a motion to appoint Richard Smith? Jack?
So moved with enthusiasm.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion, any questions of the principal? All those in favor of appointing Richard Smith, .67 FTE choral music teacher, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. There's no executive session. Director's comments.
All set.
All set.
Sorry, I won't be able to be at graduation. I will be away.
Just my congratulations to the class of 2019, and a quick reminder for the alumni weekend. It kicks off this Friday is the dance. Dues tickets are available. They'll be sold at the Dairy Joy from 5 to 8 p.m. starting Wednesday through Thursday night. The 12th and 13th are also on the Friday, the 14th of the day of the dance. So you have your options to purchase your dues tickets if you have not already done online. And then Sunday is the parade, and it kicks off at 1 o'clock. That's all I have.
Thank you. I would like to thank the school staff and all of the administration for the help that they gave a lot of little kids understanding the loss of Vinny.
Yes,
That
absolutely.
that was quite a thing. Kids are still getting through it, but this school really came together. It was, I heard a lot about it from a lot of kids, and they all felt very comfortable coming here. And that is kudos to administration. Very proud to be able to say that, you know, we're doing a good job.
Thanks.
On a better note, track champions. It was awesome. Right in the middle of it. What an experience. The last 4 years of watching these kids come through this school and succeed, and with they're so supportive of each other. It is really something to watch. And Tim Eno did a great job with those kids, and what a way to go out. What a way to retire. This has been a great experience to put a kid through 4 years of this high school.
The Evensong concert series in Grafton is a place where people are showing excellence in traditional music, and I attended and was surprised and delighted to see a recent graduate of this place, Grace Thompson, who did one of the more demanding Bach pieces I know of, and did it spectacularly well. And it's a tribute to this school's training and the enthusiasm it inspires in our graduates. I was impressed, and it's a great case example of a life skill and a possible professional training that got its start here.
And best of all, let's not rush her out of here. She's a junior, so she hasn't graduated.
I thought she was.
No,
She's
we got
not finished. I thought
another
she was
year
done already.
Listening to her sing here, so
It was. She did that so well. You would have been so proud. It's amazing.
she's amazing.
Steve?
Fine.
David?
Yes. I want to say, Molly, that about 20 years ago, and I think that only maybe Chris Hodgson and possibly Jack Breyer had to suffer through me bloviating over it, but there was a quite interesting story about restorative justice that ran in the New York Times, and it involved an inner city school in the Bronx, New York, where members of the student body actually adjudicated criminal cases of what we would consider to be a relatively minor nature for New York City. And it apparently had quite an effect on the school and on the kids who were involved in it. Interestingly enough, the analysis was that they were a lot tougher than some of those kids might have been looking at with the judge. But I am really, really pleased that after 20 years, restorative justice has come into Wyndham Northeast, because I think it's going to possibly solve, or at least help solve, some of the social issues that we have in this community that we do not have any other effective recourse to dealing with. So I really want to thank administration for getting behind it, and I certainly am supportive of the initiative.
Thank you. Deb?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Thank you. Agenda items for next board meeting, if anybody has something, if they can just email us. Date of next board meeting, July 8th, 2019.
Madam Chair, real quick, I know it's been a long meeting, but in the future, we have discussed summer recess so that we would not meet the month of July. I know that we did do that last year, so we would meet in August.
We'll see, we'll check back in later, see if
Just
we need to have a meeting.
throwing it
or
out
not.
there.
We'll take a look at the agenda as we get closer, and I'll put the word out there and ask if, see what we
There
have.
will be at least one meeting about the school somewhere else.
Okay. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
I thought I heard your